there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 1981 slasher classic, My Bloody Valentine, and it's directed by George Mihalka and stars Paul Kelman, Laurie Hallier and Neil Affleck. The residents of a small town decide to have a Valentine's Day celebration party 20 years after a disaster occurred there on the same day. However, someone is not too happy about that after them all being warned not to celebrate Valentine's Day again and decides to start a killing spree. Now, who doesn't love a good holiday horror, if you can class Valentine's Day as a holiday, but I'm just going over the purposes of this video to make things a little bit easier. But I think we've got one for every day of the calendar year now, and we just had Thanksgiving not long ago. There's plenty of Christmas horror movies out there. But with Valentine's Day coming up, I thought it'd be a good time to go back and review this beloved slasher from the 80s. Now, I do like how the movie uses the theme of Valentine's Day to its full potential here. The Valentine's Day decorations are scattered all around the town. Every store or house that we go in, we've got townsfolk who are getting really excited about the upcoming Valentine's Day party that they've going on and all talking about day coming up. But the killer utilises this to his full potential to become the ultimate Valentine's Day killer. I mean, he's sending packages to people here with twisted Valentine's Day poems on them. And when they open her up, there's like a human heart inside from the last person that he's just killed to then send off this warning to the characters. But I love how these characters open like what they think is like a box of chocolates or something. And they're reading the poem. And as the poem gets a little bit more deranged, their faces change. And when they open the package, they are just totally shocked and they can't believe what is happening.
Roses are red, violets are blue. One is dead, and so are you.
And this is all stemming from what seems like a curse that has been put on the town. I mean, this killer is doing this as warnings because 20 years before, a mining accident did actually happen in the town on Valentine's Day, and this killer seems like a little bit of disrespect has been shown. Like, the deaths in the mining accident are suddenly forgotten, and just because it's 20 years later, this town just wants to move on with it and sort of leave that in the past. But he is not going to allow them to do that. I thought that was a fun little story to go along with. A lot of slashers don't have the most interesting stories to go along with, or some of them don't even have a story at all. But this one, even though it wasn't the most unique or out there concept, I was fully satisfied and got on board with it. And I gotta say, when this movie starts to ramp it up with the kills, boy oh boy, these are some of the best slasher kills you are gonna see from an 80s slasher, or to be honest, just a slasher in general. One that really stood out to me was when this killer goes up to this old guy and smashes this pickaxe underneath his chin there, and it comes right through his face and pops his eyeball out. And the practical effects, especially for the time, were just a joy to behold. He's then proceeded to be dragged across the floor like he's just a piece of meat, and I was like, holy shit. I mean, it was one of the best slasher kills I've ever seen, I think. There's also a woman who's thrown into a tumble dryer here, and when one of the characters discovers her, her head pops out the tumble dryer and all her skin is just red raw, kind of melting in a way, but the tumble dryer is still spinning round and her head's just going round as her body's in this tumble dryer. And I was like, that is amazing. There's also nail gun kills. People are shoved on spikes. I mean, this movie is just absolutely brutal. It just goes for it and doesn't stop. And you might be quite surprised with how brutal it goes. I do fully recommend the uncut version, of course, but that just goes for, well, any movie really now, doesn't it? I mean, why cut the movie when there's a bigger version out there for us gorehounds to see? And I gotta say, I really love the look of the killer in this film. Of course, this movie centers around a mining disaster, and this guy obviously is dressed as a miner, and he's got this creepy ass looking gas mask on. He's dressed head to toe in black. He's got this cool ass pickaxe, and it's a really iconic look, I feel, but especially the first half of the movie, he acts as this dark cloud just coming to the town because the town is all lit up in red and pink for Valentine's Day, and he just stands out a mile, and it was a cool little contrast. I gotta say, this movie is very well paced as well. It's only 90 minutes long, which may come to a shock for especially younger audiences, because every movie you go and see at the cinema now seems to be at least 1 hour 45, but mostly 2 hours or over. And it's just nice to come back to these films that are just go in there, have fun, and you can get out. And the movie just absolutely flies by. You are having a ton of fun with it, and it never stops, really. And I also think it was a very good idea to have this love triangle going on with three of the main characters in this movie, because no matter what the movie is, whether it's horror, drama, comedy, if it's centered around Valentine's Day, you gotta have a little bit of a romance story in there, but it shaped things up a little bit by having this triangle and the two male leads sort of fighting over the one girl. There's a little bit of tension in there. You know, you don't quite know which way it's gonna swing, and you're left wondering, who's she gonna go for here? So that was kind of interesting. However, I gotta admit, I wasn't on board with a lot of the characters in this movie. It's one of the film's negatives. Now, a lot of slashers can suffer from this because most characters in slasher movies, especially back in the day, do feel like fodder. And I unfortunately do feel like this is the case with My Bloody Valentine. Apart from the side character Hollis, who was a fun, quirky guy, no one really stood out. No one really was stealing scenes. No one really had too much of a personality. And even though they tried with this love triangle and it was slightly interesting, it's hard to really care to see where that is going because you don't really latch onto anyone. Now, this might be a little tiny bit of a mini spoiler here, guys. I'm not going to be revealing a whole lot, but if you haven't seen the film, maybe you might go and want to watch it and then come back. But that's just a little bit of a warning there. I mean, the movie is over 40 years old, but there you go. Now, I gotta say, this movie tells you that Harry Warden, the guy who survived the mining accident at the start of the film, went crazy, and he is the killer who's come back to kill everyone in this town. And I kind of thought, it's not going to be him, it's going to be someone else, because it's a little bit too obvious, and I know this movie kind of wanted to have a little bit of a surprise thrown in there, and I kind of guessed it was going to be someone else, and I also guessed who this killer was going to be about 30 minutes in. I don't think the movie does a very good job of disguising who this person is, and I hardly ever guess the killer from these movies. I'm not really that clever, but I just seen it a mile off. So I don't know if movies have become better at disguising who the killer is for the big reveal, but I just wasn't in shock whatsoever with this film. Now, maybe that is subjective. Maybe that's just the way I seen it, but I just feel overall, after looking at it, that it could have been hidden a little bit better. Now, this is only a tiny negative here, but for the first half of the movie, this very much feels like a Valentine's Day slasher. But the second half of the film, it decides to go down this mine, and while it's a good location for a slasher to take place, I'm not sure it's the greatest location for a Valentine's Day slasher to take place, because it just feels totally different from the first half of the movie. Now, I know it's centered around, that is the story it's centered around, that's just the way it goes, but it just kind of lost its Valentine's Day appeal and just became a very, very dark looking film. It's a slight negative though, because I still did enjoy the second half of the movie. However, I had a lot of fun with My Bloody Valentines, guys, and this is a horror film that horror fans should definitely see, especially if you love a little bit of brutality. I'm just going to go ahead and rate this movie now. I'm going to give My Bloody Valentine an 8 out of 10. One of the best holiday slashers out there. Okay, guys, at the end of these reviews, I always like to leave a little fun fact. Now, a fun fact for My Bloody Valentine is that director George McHalka, in an interview, stated that they spotted this mine where they're going to film, and this was the location they were going to use because of the atmospheric feel of it, the worn down, rustic feel of this mine. And when the locals or the town knew that a movie was going to be shot there, they decided to clean it all up and spend $50,000 to fix it all up and make it look a little bit nicer. But George McHalka afterwards said that this was the opposite reason why they chose this mine, and the movie had to spend £75,000 of its budget getting it back to its original state. Man, what a bummer. Okay, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this review. If you want more 80s slasher movie reviews, that will be in the link down below. I've done quite a few now on the channel, so don't forget to check those out. What do you think of My Bloody Valentine? Leave it in the comments down below, and I'll try and get back to you all, I promise. If horror is your sort of thing, please give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. It would really help me out. You all take care, and I'll see you on the next video.